You're going to be real shocked to hear this one. But it turns out the right-wing outrage machine forgot to read the article that they're mad about. Again.
Really?
So let's talk about this supposed Trump administration flies $45 million in cash to the Taliban story. Yeah, because that's something that Donald Trump would totally do. The man who tried to ban Muslims. Okay. That headline, though, went everywhere in MAGA world. And then, of course, quietly, the facts ended up coming out. And I know this is a weird story because I'm actually kind of defending the Trump administration, which is not something I normally do. But again, this is a fact check. These are facts, okay? So let me lay out what actually happened. A bunch of right-wing accounts started blasting out posts about a $45 million cash payment supposedly flown into Kabul and handed over to the Taliban. They cited an Afghan politician who was a opponent of the Taliban, by the way. And I'm not, I don't like the Taliban either, all right? So I'm also an opponent of the Taliban, but at the same time, you got to be truthful and honest. So now this politician is Amrullah Salah, who claimed that a charter plane had brought freshly printed dollars into Afghanistan. From there, of course, MAGA does what it does best. Removes all the nuance, skips the sourcing, and turns it into, oh my God, did you know that Donald Trump, President Trump, America First, just sent $45 million in cash to the Taliban? How dare he? Again, no evidence, no context, just anti-Muslim rage bait. Of course. Now, when the fact checkers dug into it, of course, they went to many different sources. They went to the U.S. government, which is not exactly the most trustworthy source. I can totally understand that. But in this case, yeah, I think they're going to be honest about, no, of course we're not sending the Taliban $45 million. That's insane. Okay. They also looked at independent agencies, asked them, and they looked at the actual data. And they found that there is no evidence that the U.S. government sent any money, $45 million in physical cash, to the Taliban. And U.S. officials, of course, are also saying that no such direct payment had actually happened. Now, there is still humanitarian funding for the people in Afghanistan, but that is routed through NGOs and international organizations. It is not bags of cash or pallets of cash on planes being sent to Taliban leadership. Okay. And look, the Taliban itself, their central bank, publicly denied receiving any such payment from the United States. So, now, is it possible that humanitarian aid operating inside of Afghanistan gets skimmed or distorted or diverted? Yeah, of course, right? That's a problem. That's been a problem both under Biden and also Trump. U.S. watchdogs have said so, okay, have said as much. But that right there is very different from Trump is handing $45 million in cash to the Taliban. Again, there are two separate claims going on here. For one, aid going into Afghanistan under Taliban rule creates risks of diversion. And the other one is the U.S. directly wired or flew $45 million of cash to the Taliban. Number one is real. It's messy. It is a policy problem. Number two is just a lie that went absolutely viral on the right-wing media. And once again, the right wing is trying to live in this lie. I mean, look at the people who are amplifying this. You've got right-wing influencers, so-called independent journalists, right? Even some Republicans in Congress, like Tim Burchett. Now, you've got people like Ann Vandersteel talking about how the Trump administration just threw $45 million in cash to the Taliban. This is not America first. This is America deceived. Now, look, there's a lot of criticism for Trump's so-called America first, where he's not actually putting America or Americans first. That is absolutely true. But this claim, not true. The only deception here is her post. Then you've got, again, Tim Burchett. He jumps on X and says, every week to pass my bill, Senate, and claims the State Department has sent over $5 billion in cash to Afghanistan, which is also not true. He wants new laws to make sure that we are not funding terrorism. But again, he's leaning on the same unproven $45 million in cash claim to sell his story and to sell his bill. He's not presenting any new evidence. He's not showing actually any evidence. Doesn't have documents, doesn't have anything. He's just hitching his bill to a viral rumor that falls apart under the very basic scrutiny and caps it off by saying, I hope that President Trump can clean this mess up. Really? Again, Trump is a guy whose administration he is implicitly accusing of sending the cash. That's not exactly keeping your narrative straight. But this is the problem, okay? This is the pattern that right-wing media does. They take a real complicated policy dilemma, in this case, humanitarian aid in a country that is run by extremists. Step 2, they strip out all the nuance and turn it into a clean, emotionally charged accusation. Step 3, you aim it wherever it's most useful that day. If it's Joe Biden, during the Biden administration, we heard about this too, which, again, not true. It's Biden, or it's the deep state, the globalists, or they even aim it at Donald Trump if it helps fuel their clicks. And step 4, of course, when it gets debunked, disproven, whatever, you just move on. You don't correct the record. You keep the anger. You drop the facts. And then you go on to the next outrage. Meanwhile, of course, people who actually care about reality, like myself, we got to do the boring stuff. Explaining that, yes, there's humanitarian assistance. Yes, but no, there is no verified $45 million in cash flight to the Taliban. And yes, we should be worried about oversight without having to invent fake plane loads of cash. John Sopko, who is the inspector general, that actually warned Congress that, I can't guarantee that the aid isn't being diverted to the Taliban, never said, we're just flying pallets of cash, man, to the Taliban. No, he flagged the structural risk of that happening, not the fantasy cash drop that the right wing is alleging. They took a real concern and morphed it into a shareable, outrage-ready myth. And it's funny because they're even aiming it at their own guy. And again, the fallout here in the conservative reactions is very plain. You have veterans on X saying, why the F did we give the Taliban $45 million in cash today? Because they believe the headline. Because they trusted people who don't bother to verify anything as long as it gets engagement. Look, if you're on the left, this should feel very familiar. This is Benghazi. This is the immigrant caravans, the Antifa buses on January 6th. It's litter boxes in schools, right? All over again. Except now that the information or disinformation is turning back against their own guy. And even the right wing cannot keep up with what is actually the reality. And if you're a good faith conservative, boy, you are really outnumbered these days. Let me tell you what. This should be a wake-up call. You were told by these people that the government definitely just handed $45 million in cash to terrorists under Trump. That claim, of course, does not survive contact with the facts. And you got to think, how many other things that you've been told as true would end up actually collapsing just as fast, okay, when you really look at it? Here's the bottom line. This story is fake. It's pushed as nothing more than MAGA outrage bait. It is not supported by the evidence. The genuine policy issue is how to get aid to desperate Afghan civilians without empowering the Taliban. That is a problem that existed under Biden and would exist under Trump and would exist under anyone else. Now, instead of having a grown-up conversation about that, Republicans and right-wing media choose to listen to viral lies. That's it. America First, by the way, is supposed to be about putting truth and the American people ahead of political BS, right? And of course, what we're seeing is the exact opposite. Okay, America being misled on purpose because lies perform online better than the truth. And so the next time these people insist that they're just asking questions about some explosive new scandal, remember this one. Remember that they weren't asking questions about this. They were trying to sell you a story, and they don't care about whether or not the story is real. If this video helped you cut through the BS and see what is really happening, then smash that like button. Every single like pushes back against the right-wing propaganda machine. I can't do this work without your support. So please check out my Patreon. Link is in the description of this video. For a few bucks a month, you can help keep this channel independent from corporate BS. So hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's keep fighting for democracy and against fascism together.